Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge YouTube channel and to this video analysing Mathieu van der Poel's crazy Strade Bianche power data from his win on the weekend. Hello, long time no speak. We were hoping it would happen, and I saw this evening, well, your morning in Europe or America, that Van der Poel would put up the Strava file. Just a few quick comments before we get into it. I'm obliged to tell you to wear some form of personal protective equipment to protect preferably your eyes from the data we're about to look at. It's pretty terrifying stuff, as well as reminding you that I'll have highlights of every stage of Paris-Nice on this channel. Then we'll have Catalonia, then Dauphiné, Roubaix, and the Tour de France after that. And lastly, all this extra data you're seeing on the Strava readouts is from the Strava Source Chrome extension, which I use and can highly recommend. It's free. The course at men's Strade Bianche, 184 k's long, constant up and down, particularly in the last third of the course, and about 54 kilometers of gravel. His overall ride file, 4 hours and 45 minutes on the bike, 318 watts average, but 389 normalized power, peak of 1362 watts, and 189 max heart rate. The last third or so of the race, 90 minutes, he averaged 370 watts with a normalized power of 437 watts. I think he weighs about 75 to 76 kilos, at least according to the weight he's input into Strava. But what did the first 3 hours and 10 minutes or first 2/3 of the race look like? Well, it was easier obviously than that last 90 minutes. His heart rate was 138 beats per minute compared to 167 for the last 90. 292 watts average power, 356 normalized, but there's still these massive peaks of 1264 watt peaks, and that's the beauty of Strade Bianche as a race. You have to stay at the front and stay attentive on these climbs early. It's not like Milano-San Remo where you can pretty much chill until the Cipressa. But let's go to where this race really kicked off, which is the extended gravel section with about 53 kilometers to go in the race, which starts with the Monte Santa Maria climb, and Quinn Simmons attacked pretty hard. There was a break that went, but then Quinn Simmons attacked. Wout van Aert was behind him, Julian Alaphilippe second wheel marking Wout van Aert, and MVDP was out of position. He did make a mistake at this point in the race with 54 k's to go. I think he got stuck behind Kwiatkowski, who couldn't follow because Kwiatkowski crashed at maybe La Guelia on the Monday before Strade Bianche. So perhaps because he was just trying to follow Quinn Simmons, or maybe he saw that Mathieu van der Poel was out of position, but Wout van Aert accelerated really hard at this point, and Van der Poel got caught behind riders and had to move up and bridge the gap over to the Alaphilippe Wout van Aert group. And this is where he set his 20-minute peak power for the day, 406 watts for 20 minutes, 474 normalized power, average 172 heart rate. But it was really at the start on the Monte Santa Maria section where he went hard early, trying to get back into that group. He didn't try and claw them back gradually. 444 watts for nearly 12 minutes, which includes sections of descending where there's no pedaling at all. But most of that initial bridge was covered when he did his 2-minute power PB for the day, 546 watts for 2 minutes 44. I think he did like 583 for 2 minutes, bridging across to Wout van Aert quickly. And suddenly, out of nowhere, he was in that group of the lead contenders of Bernal, Pidcock, Quinn Simmons, Pogačar, Alaphilippe, and Wout van Aert, much to Wout van Aert's surprise. For the next 30 minutes of the race, this group of contenders largely worked together and didn't really attack each other, pulling turns. They were still going really hard, trying to maintain the gap to the group with, say, Fuglsang and co. So during this lull in the race, and it wasn't really a lull, he was still going super hard, Van der Poel did 347 watts for 28 minutes and 39 seconds, 388 normalized power. And then the race began to split up once again in the last 20 kilometers when Julian Alaphilippe accelerated on 2 punchy climbs, distancing Wout van Aert, and to follow those Alaphilippe moves, Van der Poel across this 4.5 minute period, and you can see the 2 climbs in the speed data here. The first climb is in the first third of this file, then the ascent is in the middle third, and then the second climb is in the last third. Van der Poel did 465 watts for that 4.5 minutes, including 2 peaks of nearly 1,000 watts each on each of the climbs, trying to follow the Alaphilippe acceleration. I think the first climb for 2 minutes, he did 506 watts. So I think that goes to show that Alaphilippe wasn't on an off day despite not winning Strade Bianche. He was throwing haymakers at Van der Poel in the last 20 kilometers as well. But then with the Wout van Aert and Pidcock group trying to chase back on in the last 20 kilometers, Van der Poel and Alaphilippe and Bernal rolled turns pretty consistently until they arrived at the Le Tauve climb with I think 12 to 13 kilometers to go, where Van der Poel absolutely launched it, attacking Alaphilippe and Bernal. Gogol and Pogačar went out the back immediately. I think Wout van Aert and Pidcock might have caught back on just before this climb, but Van der Poel accelerated, doing a 1,035 watt peak and 724 watts for a minute, his 1 minute PB for the day. And Benji mentioned it immediately afterwards on the Lanterne Rouge cycling podcast that the Le 12 climb, they come in, it's a bit of a roller. They come into it with a lot of speed. This is the full file of that climb, not just the acceleration of Van der Poel. He came into it with a max speed of 73 kilometers an hour, and for someone like him who's bigger than Alaphilippe and Bernal, coming into it with speed and then hitting it with 1,000 watts, 700 watts for a minute, and then it flattens off for a little bit shortly afterwards before going up again. Just a really good place to attack, and other riders have attacked successfully there before. I think Teish Benoit might have attacked there as well. And now we had the group of three going into the final 10 kilometers of Strade Bianche. Tour de France champion 2019, one of the best pure climbers in the world. Alaphilippe, who I said was the best puncher in 2020 and one of the best all-round riders in the world, and Mathieu van der Poel, who I'm reluctant to put any sort of category on. He's just one of the best riders in the world. And so the last 10Ks, Van der Poel averaged 380 watts, 450 normalized power. You can see the speed is up and down as well as the power throughout that last 10Ks because the parkour was up and down. There's a descent into the final climb. And this shows it slightly better how with maybe 7Ks to go until 3Ks to go, Van der Poel kept pulling pretty consistently at like 400 watts, trying to keep on 400 watts, 450 watts. I don't think he tried to attack Bernal and Alaphilippe at that point. And then he managed to get some rest. This is in the 2 minutes before the start of the final climb. Van der Poel manages to pretty much freewheel for a lot of a descent, averages 216 watts, and his heart rate is able to go down from 173 to 154 beats per minute. Now I think his max is about 188, 190 beats per minute. And this part is probably why you clicked on this video. Van der Poel goes into the final climb with Bernal and Alaphilippe on his wheel, starts setting his own pace in the first 500 to 600 meters of the climb, and then absolutely launches what some have described as a thermo-biblical, which is higher rating than thermonuclear attack in the last 500 meters, gapping Alaphilippe, making it look almost effortless. That attack had a 1362 watt peak, 904 watts for 24 seconds. Bear in mind, he's been racing for 4 hours and 43 minutes up to this point with a normalized power of nearly 400 watts, and he's able to drop, I think he did 1150 watts for 15 seconds. And what I think is really interesting about how Van der Poel rode this climb was, because this is so steep, he hit Alaphilippe with this almost from a standing start. You can see how he began to increase the power, dropped it off a little bit, brought it back up again, and then they were going about 15, 16 kilometers an hour, 14 to 15% pinch. And he's gone almost from that standing start to dropping nearly 1400 watts, 1200 watts for 10 seconds on Julian Alaphilippe in the Hood's upper climb. And you know in this final climb with Strade Bianche, if you just get to the last 200 meters in this right-hand corner here, it's pretty much false flat and then a descent to the finish. So if you're able to just keep some semblance of pedaling going and you've got a gap, it's almost impossible to lose from this point. You can see that in Van der Poel's power data. His power drops right off once he goes through that right-hand corner. But Alaphilippe isn't able to claw back too much of that gap, and he takes one of the most memorable race wins I've ever seen, not just in Strade Bianche. I was gobsmacked by that final attack. I thought it was a bit dicey going to the finish with Alaphilippe. But if you like playing with the data or the numbers yourself, or you want to go and look at certain segments of Van der Poel's ride yourself, if you've got the Strava Source Chrome extension, I'm not sponsored by the way, it's like a free app, I'm just saying. It's on the right hand side here, what you can see if you look at Van der Poel's file, it shows you, and you can click on like the 5 second to all the way through to 3 hour peaks. Click on the power and shows where it was in the race. Christophe de Kegel, his coach or trainer, I think at Alpes and Phoenix, made a few comments on Instagram about Van der Poel's ride at Strade Bianche. The big ones that stand out to me though are how his TSS of 408 at Strade exceeded his Tour of Flanders TSS despite Flanders being an hour longer than Strade, which means Strade is a crazy hard race. I don't think they need to make it any longer or change it. Don't fix something that is not broken. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a like down below if you did. I found it pretty enjoyable to put together. If you want to support the channel, you can join channel membership down below. We talk about all the races live in my Discord in real time. But otherwise, hope you're well, and I'll see you with the Paris-Nice highlights for stage 2 tomorrow. Ciao.